Hello, this is Lino Tadros, and in this video, I'm very excited about this video. As a matter of fact, this is about function calling, which in my opinion is the most important thing about AI right now in the world, especially with generative AI. Being able to create your own functions, give them a good description, and let the LLMs decide when one of your functions gets called, so you can do whatever you want inside of that function. Instead of counting on the LLM giving you the response, or maybe sometimes it will have to hallucinate and all that stuff. Nope, you can actually create 1, 2, 10, 15 different functions, give them a very good description, that's very important, and then allow the LLM to look at the description of each one and make a decision which one should get called based on the context of the question that was asked. Let's go ahead and take a look. All right, let's head back to our PromptFlow. I'm going to create a brand new one. It doesn't matter really whether it's a standard or a chat. I'm going to create a standard one so we can start from the beginning. We'll say create this one. And I'm going to call this one temperature flow. Okay? And we'll say create. And if we take a look at this one, I will actually be able to, like usual, delete the joke and the echo that comes with the sample. So we'll go to the joke and say goodbye to you. And I'll do the same thing also with the echo, say goodbye to you as well. So I'm actually left with the input and the output only. For this one, I will be probably would be the question, okay? And the value would would come up with a question really soon already. And instead of a joke, this will be an output. We've done this before, and we will say save for right now. Also, before we forget, let's start the compute session, which might take a minute to 3 minutes to come up while we continue. So what do I want to do? First of all, I would like to create an LLM to ask it a question. Great, let's click on LLM in here. We'll give it a name. We'll call it, for instance, my LLM. There you go, already. And we'll say add to that. And then in the connection in here, we'll point to our connection that we created in a previous video. We'll make it a chat. We will use GPT-4o, and maybe we'll make the temperature 0.2, and the maximum tokens we'll set it at 1,000, which is good. Alrighty. Notice automatically I will get the system prompt. You are a helpful assistant, and the user here will pass the question itself. So we're all good. Let's go ahead and validate and parse this for right now. And it will automatically show me the question because that's the variable. And I'm going to say this is the input question. So I'm starting to create my graph over here. If I go to the output, I don't have something called echo anymore. So I'm going to actually set it up to the my LLM output. Let me move this up so we can make it look better. And there you go. That is my first prompt with a very simple LLM that will get the question and trying to answer it for us. So the question now is, what happens if I come in here, for instance, for the question value as a string? I'm going to say, what is the current temperature in Orlando? Okay, I live in Orlando, and if I put it in English, it would be great. There you go, temperature for Orlando. We'll say save this guy, and let's go ahead and run it and see what the system will come up and say to us. So this will probably be something that will come back. I don't have access to the current temperature because I was trained with something that stopped in, let's say, April of 2024, and I cannot see any of that. But it's successful. See, everything here is successful, but the output, I am unable to provide real-time information like the current temperature, blah, blah, blah. You can go to the weather.com or AccuWeather or do something like that. If you remember, one of the videos that I created in this series used something called SERP APIs. If I say SERP API, that will give us access to tools like Google search and Bing search and so on. So if I do that right before the LLM, that can actually go to the website for Google or Bing and check what the weather is in Orlando right now and pass that information to the LLM, and it will work. But of course, you have to have an account with SERP API, and you'll end up paying, of course, after you use a specific amount of days or time to use SERP API as well. And a lot of different things will be like this in life, which is normal. The question is, like, what if I don't want to call another service like SERP API? Is there a way for me to create this function myself that will go out there and find out what the current temperature in Orlando or anything else? Maybe I want to make an API call to one of the 1,000 different things available in the world. And even though it's happening right now, or even it will be a forecast for next week, which definitely the LLM will not be able to answer, is there any way I can help out the LLM by creating what we call function calls? And again, my opinion is that these are the most important things that you can do in generative AI today. And that's the future, of course, of generative AI, being able to create what we call tools. Tools that will make themselves available, and the LLM is given the choice to pick one of your functions, or whenever it feels like this would be adequate based on its description. So let's go ahead and see how we can do that. Okay, so before I continue, I'd like to introduce you to our website that a lot of people use as an API. There it is. I'm going to actually dock it right here. All right, there you go. It's called weatherapi.com. Of course, there is a lot of them out there. I'm just going to pick this one up because it's easy to actually create a sign up for an account, which I just did today, actually, for this specific recording. And in this weather API, I can actually say, show me the docs. And I can actually see, for instance, real-time weather, 14-day weather forecast, and all of these. I'm interested on the left side to go to see what is the request URL looks like. So if I click on the request URL, notice I can actually see the current weather. If I want to do that, the base URL is http api.weatherapi.com version 1. I can also go after version 1 and say /current.json. You can also use XML if you want. We're going to use JSON for this one. You can actually use the /forecast.json if you want something in the future. And there's a lot of other things. I'm going to stick with the first one, current weather. That means I'm going to take this URL in here, the base, plus the /current.json. And if I go down a little bit, you will see that there are two things that need to be passed. They are both required in here, okay? The key, which is the API key. Once you create an account, you'll be given that. And then the queue, like Google does. Queue in here will be required. You will need to pass in the name of the city or the latitude and longitude, US zip code, UK postal code, Canadian postal code, something like that, okay? I'm going to go make it easier, and I'm going to be passing in a city name like Orlando, for instance, to be able to get that. All right, let's go ahead and try it out first before we do any function calling in Postman or Fiddler or curl, just to make sure that this is working just fine. All right, I started Postman on my machine. Let me go ahead here to Azure AI Foundry. This is my workspace. I'm going to go ahead and create a new collection, and we'll call this one, we'll call it PromptFlow, just to be organized and keep everything separate from everything else. And that is my collection PromptFlow, and I'm going to start the first request. The first request in here, if you remember, we need to get the base. The base, I'm going to copy and paste it and put it right there. There is the base, okay? So the api.weatherapi.com version 1. And I know that I'm going to say /current.json. All right. Remember, there are two things that I need to pass in here. The first one is the key, and the second one is the city itself. So I will need to go back and take a look also, how can I get the API key? So let's go back to the website. You see where it says my account, click on that. And once I go to my account, I should get my dashboard in here. Remember, I just created this this morning. So I have 14 days for free to try this out, and it will give you an API key. I'm going to copy that into the clipboard. And again, don't worry about it. After this video, I'm going to go ahead and click on the regenerate key. So it does not have to be out there in the wild. It's okay. And at this point, I need to go back to my Postman, and I will need to set a parameter key. So I can come in here, we'll say question mark, we'll say key equal, and I'm going to be pasting that. And notice it automatically under params, it adds the key in here as well, which is good. You can do it both ways. You can click on params and enter the value, the key and its value, and it will also add it to the URL. Plus there is another one, we'll say and this one will be Q. Q is the city, right? So we would like to say Orlando, alrighty, like that. And you can actually put Orlando first before you put the key. It's up to you how you want to do that, alrighty. And it's a getter, okay? I'm going to go ahead and do a get. I'm just be passing these parameters. If I click on send right now, it should be able to make the call, and it did 6.8. Remember, there is a lot of different values in here. There's the location, there is the current, and there is other things that you can do also, and say AQI, for instance, equals to yes, if you would like to get a lot of different information about the quality of the air in Orlando, and so on. But again, just by passing the key and the city, we're good enough. So I'm interested in not only in the location information here, latitude and longitude and all that, but I'm interested under current in here. Notice there is the temperature in centigrade and in Fahrenheit. So right now it's 52 degrees in Orlando right now. So I would like to get into this guy. So remember that when I start to write code for my PromptFlow, I would like to make that call and get the information and then go through current temp underscore F to be able to give me the current temperature, which the LLM was not going to be able to do without me helping it out like that. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, let's get back to our prompt flow. Everything hopefully here is clear so far. I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new LLM. And in this LLM that I'm creating right now, let's go ahead and call it, for instance, this will be my temp LLM, okay? We'll say for the temperature, we'll say create this guy. I'm going to set the connection as well. I'm going to say chat, and I'm going to create this on a GPT-4 as well. We'll still make it 0.2, and we'll make it as a maximum of 1,000 tokens as well. But notice here now, there is something called function calling. See, this is the fun part of playing around with generative AI. Most of the time in the previous videos, we already completely ignored this, and we did everything with the prompt and passing it variable, validated, and do all that. But right now, look what happens when I go to the function calling. Function calling, if you would like to use it, it requires two things. First of all, give it an array of all the functions, because you might not have just one function. You might have 2, 3, 10, 15 different functions that you'd like to create. What exactly does that mean? That means this one here requires an array that set up the definition of that. And I've actually opened up my my DevToys from .NET, and I just wanted to show you what it looks like. So I went into DevToys. Again, any JSON parser that will show you this in a good way, please use whatever you would like. But this is a definition of a function that the system is expecting. It has a name. I'm going to call it getTemperature. The next one is extremely important, the description. This is actually what the LLM will use to be able to find out if you are worthy of calling you based on the issue it's trying to resolve. So if you leave this empty, your function will never get called. Or if you put some weird things in here that doesn't really explain what you're trying to do, the LLM will not find it. So be careful, the description is extremely important. I'm going to say get the current temperature at a particular city. And then you will set up the parameters. Of course, in our case, we have to have a parameter, which is the city, right? So if type object and the property city, type string, and the description, again, here is very important. I'm going to tell it the city, example Orlando or Paris or London or New York or whatever. Just give it an example of the description as well. Also, there is a key called required, and you can pass, because sometimes you have 2 or 3 different parameters that need to be passed. You're going to tell it which ones are absolutely required, okay? So in my case, yes, city is the minimum we have to pass to be able to get an answer for that. So if I take this JSON packet object, we'll say Control-C that into the clipboard, and I come back in here and I'm going to paste it as is. We'll say Control-V like that, alrighty? Notice, oops, let me open up function calling again. If I click on the editor in here, it will open it up. Again, it's not formatted as nice as I showed you, but just remember, it has everything it needs. It has the name of the function, a description, the parameters, the type, the name of it, what type is the parameter itself, a description with an example, and then the required. All of that stuff is inside of there. Of course, you will notice that this could actually be an array. So I can go all the way to the top in here. We'll put an array like this, and we'll put it close an array. This is a very important piece because it doesn't have to be one. I can put a comma after, right before the bracket, and I can enter the same exact thing for a second and a third and a fourth different function. So you can actually have a full page of 10, 15 different functions where you specify the description and the parameters need to be passed to it, their type and what's required and what's not. So don't forget this array is very important. We'll say save that, and we're in pretty good shape. Now the next one is the function call. This is for the LLM. This is for me to tell the LLM when to call this function, all right? So this is a very important part. So I can come in here and say none, never call me. I mean, it's available. It's not the default, of course. Or I can come in here and say get underscore temperature. Well, that will not be good as well, but sometimes you'll find a reason why you will want to do that. That means whenever LLM is called, this is the only function that will get called, alrighty? So maybe the function is calling a different LLM, which is fine too. In my case in here, my preference is to say auto. Auto here means you're telling the system, based on the description of all the different functions I passed in the previous array, the LLM has the freedom to pick up the best function that corresponds to the question I'm asking, okay? So I will find myself maybe 90% of the time, even more than that will put auto in here to let the LLM decide which function call needs to be made. Make sense? All right, now that we have done that, I don't need my LLM anymore. Okay, this is the one that we just asked the question without using any function call. I'm going to delete this guy from here. I don't need it. We'll say goodbye to you. So I'm actually rest with this my temp LLM. Where is my temp LLM going to get its information from? Well, first of all, it will need to go through a specific function. I need to create that function. So we'll leave it here alone for a second and we'll say Python. And in this Python, we'll say get temp call. Alrighty, just to remember, this is the temperature function itself. You can call it get temperature function call, whatever will remind you why you're writing this Python code. Would say add this guy. Alrighty, I'm not going to use any of that, so we'll delete all of this. And what I would like to do inside of this Python code, I would like to bring in some code that will allow me to import, of course, the PromptFlow as a tool, and import the requests, imported JSON because I'm going to make some HTTP calls and so on. So let me go ahead and bring in the code and I'll explain it one by one. All right, so that is the code. All right, the first one is PromptFlow, like of course the system does it. As a matter of fact, in the latest release of PromptFlow, this is going to work, but it's actually deprecated. What you need to do is come in here and say PromptFlow.core import tool. This is the one that is not deprecated. So it will still work both ways, at least for the foreseeable future. But at what point you will need to put .core in here for this to work. Import request. This is for you to be able to make HTTP requests. Again, if you want to do asynchronous calls into HTTP, this is not your friend. You can use other packages from Python like HTTPX and other ones that will allow you to do async and await. The request does not allow you to do that. But again, for this example, will be fine. And of course, I'm going to bring in JSON so I can do serialization and deserialization. I went into my account, there it is, and I copied this specific API key, and I created in here API key, and I pasted that inside of there. Of course, there's a better way for you to create a custom service and actually add that API key inside of your key vault. All right, so you don't have code inside of your PromptFlow that have secrets like that. But again, for this, I just want to concentrate on what a function call is. But the right way to do it is to put this in the key vault. So you don't actually have to see it in the code itself. All right, that is my function. It's called get temperature. Okay, notice it has no add tool in front of it. This is not my tool. This is just a Python function that takes a city as a string and returns a string. Remember in Postman what I did when I said HTTP API, weather API, current JSON, and then I said Q equals, and I need to pass this city, which I'm going to be passing here in the get temperature, and then the key will be passing the string value of that API key itself. And now, when I say request.getURL.json, that will get me the entire response. But I'm only interested in one thing. I want to get the temperature in Fahrenheit, which is called temp_f. So I'm going to say return from this function. When I pass you the word Orlando, for instance, I want you to send me the word temperature, space, and then give me the current temperature in Fahrenheit as it came back from that weather API. I just want you to sit down there for a second and find out the amount of things that you can do in the world already that has nothing to do with AI. You have a SQL Server database somewhere, Postgres, Cosmos DB, you have whatever. You have access to any API, Salesforce, Hotspot, whatever, okay? If you have access to it, you can create a function. And then the next part is to create a tool, but notice here that it will have no idea at all about the specific of my get temperature. So this code from line number 15 till the end of 29 is pretty much a copy and paste every time to tell the system what you're trying to do. Remember, in here, I had something called function call, and if it's not empty, that means I want to use it, alrighty? So this is what the tool is doing. It says run functions, response message. It's a dictionary that returns a string. And I'm going to go ahead and see if the function call is empty. If its function call is empty, okay, we're done. We're out of there. No function calls and we're good. But if there is something in there, if the function call and name in function call and arguments in function call, then I will be able to assign the function name to it and do a JSON.load from all the arguments in that JSON. That's the array I showed you that has maybe 1, 2, or more functions. Alrighty, and then I'm going to go ahead and return the globals for the function name with all the args being passed to it as well. So this is what the tool will be. This is what I'm counting on for this to happen. The important thing is if I validate and parse this input, if I did my job right, let's go ahead and parse it in here and validate it. I should be able to get the inputs that I decided on in here as well. Let's go ahead and do that. Yep, there you go, response message. And the response message will be what? This is an input, right? So it will be whatever is coming back from my template LLM. So if I come in here, we'll say my template LLM output. All right, now things are starting to look better already. And if I go back in here and we'll say validate this one as well, you will notice also that is the questions. We'll say this is coming from the input to question. And the output, for right now at least, I'm going to say this will be coming from the get template call output for right now. Alrighty? So we'll move this away as long as you understand. I'm going to ask a question. What's the current temperature in Orlando? It's going to go to this my template LLM that will have function calls, and it will return. Actually, I will need to, of course, to have another variable in here that not only will return the user of the question, but also will have the output coming in from the function call itself. So we'll need to do that right away. There is obviously something that will have to happen after this get temperature call occurs, and that is where another LLM will show up, and we'll call this one, for instance, my final LLM. Okay. And this is the one that will take everything. So if I go in here, let me go ahead and set up the connection first. We'll say it's a chat, and we'll set it to GPT-4o or whatever you'd like to use as well, 0.2. Remember, for the GPT-4o, you will need to use one of the models that has function calling built into it. We know 4o does. So if not, you need to be very careful. You have to check on the documentation if function calling is available in the model that you're using as well. Make sense? All right, we'll say 1000 in here. I'm not going to use any more function calling. It's already done. The important thing for me right now is this prompt. This is the important part. I need to let it know that you are a helpful AI assistant, and I will provide you with user questions and the response coming in from a previous call. So make sure that the response is relevant. That is going to be the important part in here as well. Let me go ahead and bring that in. I'll show you what it looks like. So instead of that, I will do this. I will say, system, you are a helpful AI assistant. You will be provided with the user question and the response to that user question in English. There you go. Make sure the response is relevant to the user's question. Okay, so that's an important thing. You can actually tell it, make sure that what you're answering makes sense to you before you actually answer. I'm just trying to help here. And finally, present it as an answer to the user's question in the best format possible. Okay. Before we only had a question, and here let me go ahead and change this to a question. Okay, so if I go up, what did I call it? Question. Yep, it's called the question. That's the input. And if I go back down, I want to create something called the LLM response in here as well. All right, so if I parse this, I should get two different variables that I need to set. The LLM response that's coming in from the get temp call. Let me see what the get temp call is coming from. Yep. And the question would be coming all the way from the input question. So we would know what the question that was asked is and what we got back, and it should be able to make a decision if this is relevant or not, and it will be able to decide to give me the answer right away. Let me go back in here and make sure everything is correct. So the output will need to come out of the my final LLM, not from the get temp. So let's go back to output again, all the way to the top. And there is my final LLM. Put this down here, and now it looks good. Alrighty, so what is the first one doing after the input coming in? This is what I'm actually feeding the system, all my different functions in an array to create multiple function calls. I only created one for this one. If I click on it, you'll see this is what the function calls. And I'm telling the system, please pick whatever you feel is appropriate from the array of functions that I gave you. Pick one. Alrighty, so once it does that, it's going to pass it on to the Python code that will take that has a function called get temperature, passing in the name of the city. In my case, because my question has the word Orlando in it, or I can change it to Paris or whatever it is, it will be able to, the LLM will be able to read that question and pick up Orlando as the city and pass it on correctly and pick the correct functions called get temperature to call it. Sounds good? So I'm actually ready to run this, believe it or not. So let's go ahead and say save all of that and let's give it a run. And let's see if we get any errors on the first run. Sometimes I might have forgotten something, but I don't think so. I think this might work. So notice right now my compute session is running, and if I've done everything correctly, all of them will be in the green, and we should get an output that tells us exactly what the current, oh, it is successful. Let me say the view outputs. The current temperature in Orlando is 52 degrees Fahrenheit. This is awesome, but that's, of course, I want to see more. How did you come up with that? If you click on trace all the way at the top in here, there is my flow. It took 1.6 seconds. There is my first piece, the my temp LLM. If I click on it, you can actually take a look exactly what's going on. Remember the function call, get temperature I created? There is the JSON for the function with the string, the description of the string parameters being passed to it, all of that. And then the function call is auto. And the question, what is the current temperature in Orlando? Let's go down a little bit. And that is what the output will look like. The output will say, remember, the only thing I'm asking from the first piece is to tell me what function should I call. That's it. So the content here will be null. If this ended up going directly to the LLM, and the LLM, for instance, was able to answer something, the content will not be null. The content will have a lot of text inside of here, okay? But it's null because the function call will say the city argument that you're passing me is the word Orlando, and the name is get temperature. And this is what I'm expecting. So if I go back, for instance, and I ask a question, who's Bill Gates? You will notice here in the output that the content will be filled and there will be no function call because you were not relevant to the question, so we didn't call the function or any of your functions. But because the LLM figured out, hey, you know what, from the description, it looks like I can call get temperature. This function can definitely do the job in here. So that's the beauty about that. This is amazing, that it can actually do all of this. And then let me go to the open chat in here and see what exactly the system did in about half a second. There is all that stuff. Alrighty, and let's go back down in here. This is the amount of tokens that it spent and all of that. Let me go back up again and we'll say get temp call. This is 194 millisecond, very, very fast. And it did call it, and notice the temperature, because I told it put the string temperature colon space, and then the result coming back from the API call for the temperature underscore F would be 52 degrees. Alrighty, taking all the stuff, I'm going to end up passing it on to the final LLM, and this final LLM in here, if I click on it, you will see what the prompt look like. You're blah, 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 but it also has the question and the LLM response. So it does have actually the temperature 52 degrees from the previous call in the prompt itself. It has everything it needs to be able to answer the question in the best format possible, which is the current temperature in Orlando is 52 degrees right now. Isn't that pretty cool? All right, I hope this was useful to show you how to create function calls, what their use are for. They are the most powerful thing in my opinion. Whether using PromptFlow or not, this is the way to go, at least for the foreseeable future in the world of AI. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please click on like and subscribe so I can show you more videos hopefully in the near future. Thank you so much and have a great day. Bye-bye.